Hi, thanks for joining us. It's Debbie with By.Storytellers, and we're on with Andy Smith, and we're going to talk
Hello.
about comics and your core draft and your Lilineth. Um, Tell me a little bit about it, and then let's roll into the trailer.
Well, Lilineth Infernal Conflict is the latest graphic novel I'm doing through my publishing company, Astonishing Comics. And she first appeared in the book Core Draft that I created with a friend of mine, Dennis Turner. And she was more of a secondary character, but the fans really, I guess they really liked her because we got some really good feedback after the first two volumes of Core Draft. So we decided to do a standalone book with her, which is kind of a prequel to shine more light on her backstory. The world of Kordrath is basically barbarian fantasy, some Dungeons and Dragons magic type stuff thrown in, and a little bit of like Game of Thrones intrigue and whatnot. And with Lilith, for her standalone book, we're going back to where she's from, which is called the Abyss, to learn how she basically became this leader, I guess you could say general in her queen's army. And there was this war that was raging in the Abyss where she's from between basically she comes from a I guess you'd say a group of succubus women, and they're going up against incubi, which are the male counterparts. And there's the main leader of them is a guy named Demon Lord Vixarion, and he basically wants to rule over everything and enslave them. So there's this battle that goes on, and we see how she kind of rises amongst the ranks to become the leader that the queen wants to send up to this area called the Shattered Reach, where the Kordrath story takes place, and that's how she gets introduced up there.
That's so cool to give them a backstory like that. It really helps to get them involved in the character. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, let's I'm going to share my screen so we can do the trailer.
Cool.
It's so cool. I love it. It's
Thank
just
you.
it's really amazing. So
Thank you.
so tell me more about the book and who else is involved.
So, Dennis Turner, he's a good friend of mine. He's the co-creator of Core Draft, and of course, this as well. He's the writer of it. You know, we talk about overall storyline, and then he goes back to his computer and writes it all out after we have our conversation for me to draw from the script that he writes. And, um, Core Draft, just to touch on that again. Basically, Kordrath is a barbarian warrior. He belongs to this tribe called the Red Lions. And in his first book, his whole tribe, he was out with his partner, Adriana, who comes from a different tribe. They were basically out on a quest. When they came back from it, his whole tribe was slaughtered, just decimated, burned to the ground, gone. He's the sole survivor. So that is basically the impetus of the story. Now he needs to go with Adriana and the help of her tribe, the Black Eagles, and kind of find out why. Why was his tribe the one that was targeted out of all these different tribes? It was only his.
Mhm.
And through that, we meet the Necronite and Lilith. They're obviously the bad guys. However, Lilineth, the Necronite is definitely a bad guy. Kordrath's definitely a hero. Lilineth kind of rides that line. She kind of has her own agenda that
Mhm.
the Necronite doesn't know about. So while the Necronite thinks he's her boss, telling her what to do and whatnot, she is more playing him
Mhm.
in kind of the background, you
Mhm.
know. And we find out more of that in the second book, Kordrath the Awakening. And at the end of that book, some things get tied up. So we try to write every book so it's a standalone,
That's
um,
good.
kind of like an
Yeah.
episodic TV show where you watch for an hour and it's like, oh, look at that. They wrapped it up in an hour. I know who the murderer was.
Hmm.
But there's those little subplots with the characters that carry through. So that's
Yeah.
how these books are created.
That's really great. I love it when they have the mysteries like that you have to unfold.
Yeah, and so in Lilith, at the end of the second book, she goes back to her home. So her book starts off literally in at the end of Kordrath the Awakening, we see her entering this portal because that's how she travels through these different planes. And on the very first page of her book, we see her exiting the portal to her realm.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the portal through it, you can see little figures of Kordrath and Adriana from the other side
Oh, wow.
to kind of connect it to the Kordrath book. And then, like I said, her whole book is a prequel telling about her story and how she came to be um, the the general in her queen's army, and then why the queen chose her specifically to go up and basically um, team with the Necronite for what his overall plans are. And obviously, it's not a spoiler. He's the one that, took out Kordrath's tribe, but obviously Kordrath has to figure that out.
And you have to
So,
figure out why they did it, right?
right, right.
That's so cool. And I'm sure there's conflict between the characters and their conversations.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love having the character Lilineth where she's good and bad. She's just, her own person. I love that. Very strong
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. It's not just the typical, oh, two good guys, two bad guys type of thing. There's
Mm-hmm.
definitely more going on within.
That's so fun. Relationships are fun like that. So what do you like best about doing this, doing your own book? What do you like best about it?
I mean, no real constraints. When I worked for Marvel and DC, I got the script sent to me and, the script was approved. So not that I would go out of my way to make changes to a script I got, but if there were things that I thought that could be done better before I could just do it, I would have to run it up the flagpole.
Hmm.
Doing your own thing like this, I'll make changes when I'm working on a page, and I don't, if it's drastic, I might give Dennis a call and just say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing." But um, if it's not that drastic, or I guess it really just depends on what it is I'm doing. But the gist is, I'll just change it as I'm working.
Hmm.
There's no, because he trusts me. Obviously, I've got the comic experience background. He doesn't. He comes from more of a short story writing
Hmm.
background, not comic books. So this is kind of a new medium for him in regards to the writing style. So he trusts me with what I want to do decision wise. So I mean, that's the big thing. There isn't
Hmm.
really that higher boss that I have to answer to.
That's
So
cool. And then you did
yeah,
this on Indiegogo. Tell me a little bit about that. There's people that want to get into comics or have their books funded. Tell me about the funding process.
sure. So Indiegogo, it's a crowdfunding platform, just like Kickstarter is. Uh, Indiegogo and Kickstarter crowdfund other things besides comics. They do tech stuff. I mean, you name it, it's probably on there. There's a couple other sites. Fund My Comic is literally a crowdfunding site, but it's just for comic books and graphic novels. And then there's also one called Zoop, Zoop. That's
Mhm.
also just graphic novels and stuff. Those latter two came around after I already started doing crowdfunding on Indiegogo 4 or 5 years ago. And I like Indiegogo because they have a in-demand feature, which means after the live funding period is over, instead of the campaign being closed and that's it, you can keep it up in demand and people can still go in and back it. And it's up to you when you want to pull it down. So it's almost like a store at that point. Um, Crowdfunding's good because, I didn't win the Powerball 2 weeks ago as much as I tried. So, and I'm not independently wealthy.
Mhm.
So, this is a great way for creators to try and raise money for their projects. I got into it because I saw some of my peers, some of my friends in the business break away from Marvel and DC to do their own thing the exact way. And then
Mhm.
I would obviously talk to them and get pointers and stuff about setting up a campaign, setting realistic goals, and even the breakdown of the different perk levels. Because while I'm only doing one book, out of the gate, you might think, okay, so there's just one thing to back. But if you go look at the campaign page, there's variant covers. So on Lilith, I did two covers. I had a guest artist do a cover, so that's three. I'm doing a foil edition, so that's four. I'm doing a signed and numbered newsprint edition of the book where, the regular book is printed on, nice, not nice because I like newsprint, but modern paper,
Uh-huh.
either a nice matte finish or gloss. It's perfect bound, so it's not stapled. Well, for the newsprint edition, we're stapling it like an old school comic. It's going to be printed on newsprint, and the colorist I'm working with is coloring the newsprint version more flat color, like the
Mhm.
books that came out in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, that's
And that
fun.
one's limited to 100 copies, and
Okay.
they'll be signed and numbered. So you can add different things like that to your campaign so you have multiple tiers to choose from. I just put up a new t-shirt a couple days ago featuring the character from one of the covers I did.
Oh, great.
There's a feature tier, which is a custom box that we're making that has, artwork on the box. And then inside the box, you'll get every edition of the cover. You'll get a little 2-inch minifigure of Lilith because this is, like I said, there's a Dungeons and Dragons aspect to all the books. So when people read them, you don't have to know Dungeons and Dragons to read it, but the people that we know that have read it that are uh, role play gamers, Dungeons and Dragon players read it and they're just like, oh, I caught this reference. Oh, I caught that reference. And Dennis has written game modules as well based on the Dungeons and Dragons format. So you can actually play a core draft game as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so when you do when you do a campaign like this to try to get the funds to create the project, you need to think of more than just offering the one book.
Hmm.
And the nice thing is, even if you don't know anybody that's done it before, you can go to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Fund My Comic, Zoop, look at different graphic novel campaigns and just see what piques your interest and kind of use it as a template for your first campaign,
Hmm.
you know. So there's the learning process of all the back end stuff, writing up all the tiers and all that. But when it comes to like how you want to format it, I mean, they're all right there. There's so many campaigns for graphic novels and stuff.
Hmm.
Like I said, you could pick two or three that you really like and go, "Oh, I'm going to do something like this and from that one." And I'm talking, of course, about the formatting of it, not
Right.
not the actual story and stuff. That
Of
is the
course.
original.
Yeah, of course.
So
So, when you do that, you don't start the book until you have the funding, or how does that work? Can
no, so that's a great question. So generally for a campaign, my advice is if you're going to have variant covers, you want to have all the covers done so you can show those on the campaign before it launches. And then I would recommend 5 pages at least, maybe more, to show on the campaign as well. So people can see the stuff. If you're totally brand new at it and you've never had anything published before, I would recommend the pages be lettered so they can get a sense of the story and your writing, as well as obviously seeing the artwork. We did that for the first core draft campaign. For the second one and for the Lilith, we have artwork up, but it's not lettered
mm,
because you can go to like the core draft website now and see preview pages from the other books and get a sense that way. But definitely you need to have the covers done. You need to have at least, I say, 5 pages
mm,
done. Most books, the average price is $25, and that's for a book starting at 48 pages and usually to about 64, maybe 72. If you're doing something that's like 80 pages, you can bump it up to, let's say, $30, and then you just take it incrementally. But if you look at the standard across the board, pretty much 48 to 64, most people charge $25 for it.
mm,
And no, I'm working on the book uh as the campaign's going. Like I said, when the campaign launches, I've got, generally 5 pages. For Lilith, I had three.
mhm,
But once again, I have a track record of fulfilling previous campaigns. I've been in the business for, 3+ decades. So I can kind of bend the rules some. But once
mm,
again, if you're just totally new to it, you need to have the preview pages up and whatnot for the people to see it. In regards to promotion, uh, obviously most people have social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever. The biggest one, though, I believe, is YouTube because you can really connect with your audience that way. I mean, you
mm,
can do lots of social posting, which I do to promote it. But if they're just reading a post, they don't get to know you, and
mm,
especially if you're brand new at it. Once again, since I've been doing it for so long and do the conventions and all that, lots of people know me. But I still really do YouTube the most, so they get a sense of your personality. Because if they
mm,
like you, they're more than likely, want to support the project you're doing.
mm,
So if you don't have a YouTube channel, I would suggest starting one, and it can be, obviously it wouldn't be a cooking channel because you're
mhm,
trying to do a graphic novel.
mhm,
It wouldn't be construction.
mhm,
And I assume if you want to do this, you read comics already and probably are a movie buff and TV and all that. So talk about that stuff.
mhm,
Talk about what you like. It doesn't matter. I'm sure there's stuff I like that some of my viewers are like, ugh, I'm not a fan of that. But that's okay because they'll still see, your passion come through when you're talking about it. And I think that's more important than what it is. I have friends, obviously I don't like all the same stuff that we don't like all the same stuff that is,
mhm,
but you just get jazzed up and enthusiastic listening to them talk about it. And
mhm,
it's a great way to interact because once you build the channel up enough, you can do live streams. And I do basically one live stream a week and then two pre-recorded videos on top of that. But the live stream's good because then people can interact in the chat. And once again, it's a conversation, not like we're having, but you can react in real time to what they're saying in the chat and stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. What
Yeah.
about for people that are starting out? about the how about the printing and all the little characters? Is there like a place to go to learn where to get all that done? And where do you printing overseas or in the US?
No, no, I print here. Actually, myself and four other guys, we all use the same printer, and it's one that one of the guys used for a while and just told us about, and we're like, oh, okay, we'll contact her.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, you know, you can do. Um, it comes down to obviously the amount of books you're printing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a website called Mixam, Mixam, which does book printing in small runs. And I, right out of the gate, before, you know, to kind of budget, because you need to create a budget for yourself, I'll get a quote, obviously, from the printer I've been using for the past few years, but that can take some time because she needs to get the specs and all that. And, you know, that could take a week or so. So I'll go to Mixam and just type in their quote form. I'll fill it out, page count, the cover, paper stock, all that. And then you can just pop in 100 copies and it'll, boom, right there, show how much it is.
Mm-hmm. That's
And I'll
cool.
sometimes screen grab that. Then I might pop in 1,000 copies,
Mm-hmm.
screen grab that, and then 500. So the nice thing about that website is, and I've used them to print as well because they're really good for small runs, like, you know, under say 300.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've used them before and they do good work, but I'm printing more than that now. So it's, you know, it's better going with this one woman that I was put in touch with. So that's, you know, that's easy. And you can just search print on demand as well or
Mm-hmm.
low print run type stuff. There's many different places out there that print comics now that you can find online. So I would definitely recommend setting up a budget, and I would recommend, you know, going low ball. So
Mm-hmm.
go, you know, if you're totally brand new, honestly, I would just go, well, how many are 50, how much is it going to cost to print 50 copies? You know, just to see. It's going to
Mm-hmm.
be expensive,
Mm-hmm.
but, you know, depending on how many pages it is, it's still, you know, you could, if you're doing, say, a standard 48 page book and you're going to charge 25 bucks, you can print 50 copies and it'll still be less than that. So there's, you know, some money left over after you sell it. Now, obviously, the more you print, you know, cheaper it gets.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I would also kind of advice warn about is don't bite off more you can chew.
Mm-hmm.
I know people that for their very first project did 80 to 100 pages. And it's
Wow.
just like, that's just insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's insane.
it would take a long time.
Well, it's not
Plus,
it's
it's
that, but
expensive to
the
do.
money, right, it's expensive. I back a lot of projects. You know, some of the projects I back are obviously friends showing support. Some are people I don't know. I'm just like, oh, that's cool. I'll back it.
Mm-hmm.
And some guys do just the regular 32 page floppy, you know, comic book that's stapled. And I think for those, I've seen them anywhere from $10 to 15,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for it. And I have no problem paying that because, you know, yes, on the flip side, you could say, well, if I go to the comic shop, Marvel and DC charge, you know, 4.99 for a 32 page comic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the difference is their 32 page comic is generally 20 pages of story and 12 pages of ads.
Yeah.
The 32 I'm getting from this other guy might not be 32 pages of story. It might be 26, 28 with 4 pages of like sketchbook stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know, behind the scenes stuff. But the analogy I like to use is, you know, Marvel and DC are like McDonald's,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Well, I can go to McDonald's, I can get a hamburger for, you know, $2, right? Well, if I go to a restaurant that has a waiter and stuff, and we'll just use the chain. Say I go to like a Chili's or a TGI Fridays or Applebee's, whatever. Hamburger there is going to be 4 to 5 times that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
$2 at McDonald's, Applebee's, 15 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of the quality.
Mm,
obviously the service you're getting. And that's what I'm saying with the crowdfunded books, they do cost a little more. The quality's generally better,
mm,
and the work isn't split up among so many people.
yeah,
You
Marvel
know,
they
it's
and DC
general,
they split up the art between a lot
right.
of different artists, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, plus you
So,
get in an indie comic, you get original stories, you get an original
right,
characters.
right. And you can jump on right at the beginning of something, you
Mm,
know. So, um, so yeah, so I mean, you could even, if somebody's just starting out fresh, do a 32 page book. Um, and show pages online. Now, if you're doing a 32 page book and say 28 of it is actual story, I would never show more than 5 pages
mm,
because I mean at that point you're already a fifth in of
mm,
what you're showing. And here's the other thing too, you don't have to show 5 pages in consecutive order either.
okay.
Because the whole point of the campaign is to entice somebody to go, man, I want to back this project. I want to
Mm,
know, I want to read this. And look, you might not have 5 pages in a row that are just like, whoa, mind blowing. So, kind of like a movie trailer, pick
mhm,
the best stuff. I work in order when I do a book. So, generally on my campaigns, the preview pages you see are the first either five or three,
mm,
whatever. But we also, I come from kind of a school of thought with comics where those first few pages, you really want to pull the person in.
right. It's like your
So,
movie trailer.
yeah,
You do it that way.
yeah.
Yeah. Are your books you do sell it through your publishing company? Do you sell to comic book stores as well or just online?
No, not yet. Now, we overprint, of course. After the campaign's done, we'll overprint by say 20% or more. So we have overstock to sell on the website when we go to conventions. Um, we thought about taking the first two core drafts because if you take those first two volumes and break them down to like 20-page blocks,
Hmm.
it's about, I'm trying to remember, I think it's almost 7 issues worth of stuff between
Wow.
those two books. So we're thinking about it. We've talked to Diamond's gone now, but
Yeah.
there's another distributor that we know that just started up.
Mm,
And we're thinking about maybe next year putting those in shops. And then, of course, if we did that, they'd be printed on, well, they'd be, a whole new print run because
hmm
they'd be 32-page books, 20 pages of story, and, 12 pages of, some behind the scenes stuff. We'd probably try and sell some ads,
hmm
of course, because they would be the typical price of like, 4.99 per book.
hmm
But they'd be on a little lesser paper stock, because the thing is, you don't want your backers to go, what? I could have just done this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's cool. So you've been in comics a long time. Tell me about your experiences and how everything's changed from when you started to now.
well, well, back then,
Oh, in the olden days.
back in the olden days, when I started, there was no internet. There was no, I mean, not for the consumer.
Mm,
I didn't even have a computer. I started drawing comics in 91. I didn't even get a computer until 96 or 97.
wow.
Um, I would get a box from the publisher, Marvel or DC. They send you paper to draw on, and the paper is 11 by 17. Comics are drawn 1.5 times larger than they're printed. So they would send me the Bristol board paper to draw on, and generally they would print out the script from the writer and throw that inside the box as well, or they would fax it to me.
Fax.
Um, oh
What's a
yeah,
fax?
that's right. Yeah, people are like, what's a fax machine? Um, and uh, after I got done drawing pages, I owned a photocopy machine and I would photocopy them and then, reduce down to 8.5 by 11 size so I could fax them up
Mhm.
to the publisher, the editor, so they could go, yeah, these are cool, mail them up. And I'd mail them up FedEx overnight and they would take them and send them to the letterer because all the lettering was done by hand. And then they'd get them back. The letterer would mail them back to the publisher. The editor would look at them, mail them to the inker. The inker would mail them back to the publisher. The publisher would make these small copies because back then all the coloring was done on 8.5 by 11 print size copies of the pages. And then with technology, it first was coloring on the computer. Photoshop was introduced around 94, 95, I think. And that helped out because then we would still mail pages up, and their production department would scan them and send them over to the colorists. But they could also send the pages to the letterer at the same time because the computer lettering was coming into fashion at that time. So now the letterer and the colorist can be working at the same time. So that helps
Hmm.
deadline wise. And then DC and Marvel got the idea going of we should tell our artists they need to have a scanner because
Hmm.
then they can scan it and we'll tell them what size and everything and they can do the pre-production stuff and then they can just, upload them to our servers and then the colors can grab it. So, you know, the, it's nice because you have more control doing
Hmm.
that. But at the same time, they didn't pay you anymore.
Hmm.
I get paid to draw the book. Once I started inking my own work, that's when, if I was just penciling, I would still mail the pages, except now I would scan it, send pencils up through email, and then they would say just mail the pages directly to the inker to save that step of publisher then to inker.
Hmm.
So that's fine. But once I started inking my own work, then it was okay, you can scan them, which is nice because the originals never leave my hand
Hmm.
or my house.
Hmm.
But like I said, they're like, okay, it's not just scanning it, it's making it, here's our template for print size, make it fit the template, do the
Yeah.
production work so the colors can just get it, and start coloring. And it's like, okay, I don't get paid to do production. Is there money behind that? Oh, no, of course not.
Of course not.
So it's like, but your production guys up there get paid, don't they? So yeah, that was kind of a thing. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's changed that way, with everything's electronic. There are so many artists now that, younger artists that have only, gotten in the business around uh, 2010 or early 2000s who maybe started working traditional, but now they're 100% digital
Mm,
with all their work. Um, I'll kind of do a hybrid. I've drawn some stuff on the computer, but then I always print it out onto the full-size Bristol and non-repro blue, which is basically a really light blue,
mm,
because I like inking traditionally with real inking tools, and I love having original art.
mm,
I mean, I guess if you're a digital person and that's how you came of age, that's all you know. So
mm,
having original comic art doesn't even mean anything to you, which is
mm.
just beyond me.
Yeah, mind blowing.
I collect original. I love original art. So
Yeah, me too. Me too.
yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So, oops, what's okay? So you also do you teach a little bit. You have some books that you some
Yep.
sketchbooks on how to do. Sorry,
Yep. So the I've written two how to draw books that I don't have on my website because, you know, I, I got comp copies a long time ago. Now I have like one of each. You can get them because they're out of print now. You can go to Amazon or just do a Google search and find them. Here's the nice thing if you don't care about condition. The first one was drawing dynamic comics, cover price 20 bucks, 144 pages. You can probably find it for $5 now if you don't care that it's not brand new. Um, the next one was drawing American manga superheroes because manga was pretty pretty big and popular through both of the companies for a while there about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And then I did a book. I partnered with a guy on a book called the How to Draw Superhero Sketchbook.
Mhm.
And this guy created a sketchbook that it's the size of it's 5.5 by 8.5, and it's a hardback book, but it lays flat, and basically all the drawings in it are in blue. And the point is, all you need is a pencil because you draw over top of the work I did in the printed book. And as you progress through the book, basically less of my drawing is there. So you have to fill in more of the gaps as you learn along the way. So, I mean, there's writing in it too, of course.
Mhm.
Um, and, that guy, he did one. He's actually a shoe designer or he was a shoe designer for uh, New Balance, I believe.
Mm.
And he did a book on, he has multiple how-to sketchbooks. Just you can search how to draw superhero sketchbook, and you'll find his site and
Oh,
stuff because
that's
you can get that
cool.
from him.
That's
And yeah, on my website there is a section I offer video tutorials. So if somebody wants a portfolio review, where I also draw over their stuff and kind of show them stuff. I share my screen. Basically, I do something like this, except I share my screen so they can see me draw right over top of their stuff digitally. And when that's done, I send them the entire 2 hour video so they can always refer back to it. And then I send them all the files of the work of theirs that I drew over so they can refer back to that too.
Wow, that's awesome. I wish
Yeah.
I'd known you when I took a class in college on I wanted to take a class on how to write comic books, right?
Oh,
So
sure.
I get into the first day of this class and it was a drawing class. And at the time I was doing my comic and I was working with like Andy Park and Sean
Oh, yeah.
Gordon Murphy and Mark Brooks and like I don't draw. And I was so embarrassed. I didn't want to go into a drawing class. I had no talent in drawing. I can paint but not draw. So I took the class still, and I did the whole comic strip because we had to draw something. All
Sure.
I could draw were kneecaps from the feet down. So I drew a little short little character, and I called it Kneecaps. And it was just
Oh, there you
a
go.
comic book from a short person's point of view. So, but
Sure.
it was knobby knees and shoes. It was pretty
That's fun though, because
ridiculous.
like, I went to art school, but and who knew? I didn't. This never even crossed my mind, and it wouldn't have prevented me from going. But when we had to do comic book pages in art school, I guess I thought before I went, they might be like, "Here's a script, work from this." But it was more like, "Okay, come up with a 4 page story, come up with a five
Hmm.
page story," and that
Hmm.
was back then for me. That was difficult because I never did any. I just drew all the
Hmm.
time. So. Um, Yeah, the 4 or 5 page stuff I did definitely wasn't anything that would win an award, but it was more about the storytelling visuals than anything else.
Yeah, they
So,
teach you that you have to make every page important, and
right.
I learned so much from the teachers then. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, you want to have a good page turn at the bottom, you know,
Hmm.
kind of a mini cliffhanger for, ooh, what happens on the next page?
Turn that page. Yeah,
Yeah.
how fun. So
Yeah.
what's next for you?
Well, I mean, Lilineth doesn't ship until July of next year, and I'm about a quarter of the way through it. So for now, just finishing that, working on that. Um, if you go to my website, I do take on outside work, as in, I've done some advertising type of work. I've done stuff for the TV show, and this was years ago, but I did stuff for the TV show Big Brother on CBS and stuff for the Chicago Bears that I do kind of yearly now. Um, so if anybody needs work done in a superhero comic book style, I'm
Mhm.
your guy.
Yeah.
Um, and then, if somebody wants a cover for their comic, I'll do stuff like that as well. And then other than that, it's just working on Lilith. And then, every now and then I'll get just private commissions of, somebody wants a certain hero drawn just for their collection or something.
That's great.
So
Well,
yeah,
we're about out of time. Thank you so much for coming on today.
you
And
got it. Thank you.
we'll put all your links in the posts and
Cool.
everybody go get his book, Hordrath and Lilineth, Andy Smith. Thank you very
Appreciate it.
much, Andy.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye,
Bye
guys.
bye.